This first story comes from Jake, a paramedic with 10 years of experience working for Seattle Fire Department's emergency medical services. Jake has responded to thousands of calls, heart attacks, strokes, overdoses, traumatic injuries. He's seen people in their final moments, and he's brought people back from the edge of death more times than he can count. But one call last November still makes him check his rearview mirror obsessively when he's driving the ambulance. It was 11:47 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday when Jake and his partner Maria received a call for an unresponsive elderly male at a residential address in the Ballard neighborhood. The dispatch notes indicated the patient's wife had found him collapsed in their living room, not breathing, no pulse. Jake was driving. Maria was in the passenger seat preparing equipment. They arrived on scene in 8 minutes, well within the critical window for cardiac arrest survival. The patient was an 82-year-old man named Walter Chun. His wife had already started CPR based on 911 dispatcher instructions. Jake and Maria took over immediately, working through their protocols with the practiced efficiency that comes from years of training. They got a pulse back after the second round of defibrillation. Walter was unconscious but breathing, and his heart was beating on its own. They loaded him onto the gurney and into the ambulance for transport to Harborview Medical Center. Maria stayed in the back with Walter, monitoring his vitals and maintaining his airway. Jake climbed into the driver's seat and started the 12-minute drive to the hospital. About 3 minutes into the transport, Jake heard Maria's voice through the communication system. "Jake, patient is stable. Vitals are holding steady. Copy that." Jake responded, navigating through the wet Seattle streets. Convoy of 5, you got your ears on? This is Midnight Express. Still nothing. Derek continued driving, and about 15 minutes later, he saw taillights ahead. The convoy had stopped on the shoulder. All 5 trucks were pulled over in a line, hazard lights flashing. Derek's first instinct was to check if they needed help. That's the trucker code. You look out for each other on the road. He pulled his rig onto the shoulder behind the last truck and grabbed his flashlight. As Derek approached the trucks, he noticed several things that didn't make sense. The trucks were running. He could hear their engines, but they appeared to be completely empty. No drivers visible in any of the cabs. "Hello? Anyone need help?" Derek called out. No response. The wind howled across the empty desert, and Derek felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. He walked up to the first truck, shining his flashlight into the cab. Empty. The engine was running, the lights were on, but there was no driver. Derek checked the second truck. Same thing. Empty cab, engine running, no sign of anyone. That's when Derek noticed something that made his blood run cold. The trucks had no license plates. Not missing plates. The mounting brackets were there, but there were no plates, no registration stickers, nothing. And the tires. Derek shined his light down at the wheels and saw that the trucks were sitting on ancient, worn tires, the kind that would never pass a DOT inspection. The tread was practically gone, and the rubber looked cracked and weathered as if these trucks had been sitting abandoned for years. Derek pulled out his phone to take photos, but his phone wouldn't work. No signal, which wasn't surprising in this remote area, but his phone's camera wouldn't even open. The screen flickered and went dark. "Time to get out of here," Derek muttered to himself. "Sir, your heart is beating. You're alive. We're getting you help. My heart might be beating, but I'm not in there anymore. I can feel it. I'm here with you now, and I need to make sure Margaret gets my message." Jake desperately wanted to tell Maria what was happening, but he didn't want to sound insane. He decided to focus on driving while trying to process what he was experiencing. "Tell her about the roses," Walter continued. "Every year on our anniversary, I planted a new rose bush in the backyard. There are 57 of them now, one for each year we've been married. She thinks I just liked gardening, but each one was a promise that I'd love her for another year. I'll tell her," Jake whispered, "and tell her to check the blue box in my workshop. There's a letter in there, and a key to a safety deposit box at the bank. I wrote down everything she needs to know. Jake was approaching the hospital now, just a few blocks away. When he glanced in the mirror again, Walter's apparition was fading. "Thank you, young man. You have a kind heart. That's why I could talk to you." Walter's image smiled sadly. "Take care of Margaret for me. She's going to need help with the back step." Jake pulled into the emergency bay at Harborview. As he put the ambulance in park, he heard Maria's voice, now urgent. "Jake, patient is coding. Get back here." Jake rushed to the back of the ambulance. Walter's heart had stopped again. They worked on him for another 20 minutes in the emergency department, but they couldn't bring him back. Walter Chun was pronounced dead at 12:31 a.m. Jake met with Walter's wife, Margaret, after the pronouncement. He told her what her husband had asked him to relay, feeling foolish but compelled to honor the request. Margaret's reaction confirmed that Jake's experience had been real. Linda felt chills run down her spine. What did the voice sound like? Older, kind. He had a slight accent. Chinese, maybe? He kept saying Linda will take good care of you. Linda is the best nurse here. Linda had never introduced herself to this patient or her family. Her name wasn't on the door or visible anywhere in the room. Over the following months, Linda heard similar reports from families of patients assigned to room 237. A kind, elderly man's voice offering comfort and reassuring them about the quality of care they would receive. Always mentioning Linda specifically, always describing her as the best nurse in the unit. Linda requested to never be assigned to room 237 again, but she still passes by it during her rounds. Sometimes, late at night, she sees the heart monitor displaying that familiar rhythm, even when it's unplugged. And sometimes, when new patients arrive scared and alone, their families report that a gentle voice told them not to worry because Linda would take excellent care of them. Linda sent me copies of the incident reports she filed, along with statements from family members who heard the voice. She also included Mr. Chen's medical records showing his heart rhythm patterns, which exactly match what she observed on that monitor. Some patients, it seems, never really leave the ICU. This second story comes from Maria, a long-haul driver with 10 years of experience running routes through the western states. Maria specializes in overnight runs, preferring to drive when traffic is light and the highways are empty. In September of last year, Maria was running a load from Reno to Denver, taking Route 50 across Nevada, a road nicknamed the loneliest road in America. It's a well-earned nickname. You can drive for an hour on Route 50 without seeing another vehicle, passing through small towns with populations of 50 people or less. Maria left Reno around 8 p.m., planning to drive straight through the night. By midnight, she was deep in central Nevada, about halfway to the Utah border. The road was completely empty. No other vehicles. No lights except her truck's headlights cutting through the darkness. That's when she saw him. A man standing on the side of the road, thumb out, hitchhiking. Maria's first reaction was surprise. You rarely see hitchhikers anymore, especially not on Route 50 in the middle of the night. Her second reaction was concern. The nearest town was at least 30 miles in either direction. How did this person get way out here? Maria slowed down, her years of highway experience warring with her compassion. Picking up hitchhikers is generally not recommended for truck drivers. Too many risks, too many potential problems. But leaving someone stranded on Route 50 in the middle of the night could be a death sentence. She pulled over about 50 yards past the hitchhiker and watched in her mirror as the man jogged toward her truck. He looked ordinary enough, maybe in his 40s, wearing jeans and a jacket, carrying a small backpack. Maria rolled down her passenger window as the man approached. "Where are you headed?" she called down. Ely, the man said. Car broke down about 10 miles back. I've been walking for hours. I'd really appreciate a ride. Marcus mentioned this to other night staff, and several nurses confirmed they'd noticed the same pattern. But everyone just wrote it off as a coincidence or a quirky mechanical issue. That changed on a Thursday night in February. Marcus was transporting Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly patient who had passed away from complications following heart surgery. As usual, when he pressed the basement button to take her to the morgue, the elevator stopped at the 7th floor. But this time, when the doors opened, Marcus saw someone standing in the hallway. It was an elderly man in a hospital gown, standing with his back to the elevator. Marcus called out, "Sir, are you okay? You shouldn't be up here at night." The man turned around, and Marcus immediately recognized him. It was Mr. Patterson, a patient who had died 3 weeks earlier. Marcus had transported Mr. Patterson's body to the morgue himself. Mr. Patterson looked exactly as he had in life, but there was something different about his appearance. He seemed clearer somehow, more present than the frail, sick man Marcus remembered from his final days. "Thank you for being so gentle with us," Mr. Patterson said. "We appreciate the dignity you show." Marcus stood frozen in the elevator, unsure if he was hallucinating or having some kind of breakdown. But Mrs. Rodriguez's body was right there beside him, and this was definitely happening. Marcus managed to ask. Mr. Patterson smiled and gestured down the hallway. For the first time, Marcus looked beyond Mr. Patterson and saw others. Dozens of people in hospital gowns, all ages, all standing peacefully in the 7th floor hallway. Marcus recognized several faces, patients he had transported to the morgue over the previous months. "We wait here," Mr. Patterson explained. "Before we move on. It's peaceful on the 7th floor. Quiet. And we wanted to thank the people who cared for us." The elevator doors began to close. Marcus reached for the button to hold them open, but Mr. Patterson held up his hand. "Take care of Mrs. Rodriguez," he said. "She's ready to join us now. And Marcus, thank you for treating us like people, not just bodies. That means more than you know." The doors closed, and the elevator continued to the basement. Marcus completed his task in the morgue, but he couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. When he returned upstairs, he immediately took elevator 3 to the 7th floor to investigate. The hallway was empty and dark, but it didn't feel empty, if that makes sense. It felt inhabited. Marcus started asking other night staff about the 7th floor. What he learned made his experience even more unsettling. The 7th floor had originally been patient rooms when the hospital first opened in 1965. But in 1978, following a series of unexplained deaths and patients' complaints about disturbing presences, the entire floor was converted to administrative use. The deaths had all occurred in room 717, always during night shifts, always involving patients who were expected to recover. No medical explanation was ever found for these deaths, but they stopped completely once patient care was moved away from the 7th floor. Room 717 was now used for storage, but Marcus learned from security that the motion sensors in that room activated frequently during night shifts, despite no one having access to it. Sarah ran back to the ambulance, where David was already starting the engine. They transported Tyler to the trauma center, and he survived after extensive surgery. Later, Sarah researched the area and found articles about Emily Patterson, age 24, who had died in a single-vehicle accident on Route 219 in March 2019. Her car had gone off the road at mile marker 46, and wasn't discovered for 3 days despite extensive search efforts. Sarah also discovered something that gave her chills. Over the past 3 years, there had been 6 serious accidents on that stretch of Route 219. All 6 victims had been found quickly by first responders, despite being far from the road in difficult terrain. And in every case, the first responders reported being guided to the scene by a helpful young woman who then disappeared before they could get her statement. Sarah provided me with Tyler's patient care report, news articles about Emily Patterson's death, and statements from other EMTs who had experienced the same phenomenon on Route 219. Sometimes, it seems, the urge to help others doesn't end with death. Emily Patterson died alone in the woods, undiscovered until it was too late. But she's made sure that no one else will suffer the same fate on her stretch of highway. She couldn't save herself, but she's saved 6 others, and counting. Last I heard, it's still out there somewhere, rusted hulk on the side of Route 50. Nobody ever claimed it. Maria gave the clerk the photograph. Could you make sure this gets to anyone who knew the Sullivans? Maybe they have family still around. The clerk looked at the photo and nodded. I'll see what I can do. Maria provided me with her logbook showing the date and time, GPS records of her route, the photograph, which she took pictures of before giving it to the clerk, and documentation of her CB radio conversation with the driver who reported the disabled vehicle. She also sent me the news article from 1996 about Robert Sullivan's death and his daughter Sarah, who died of leukemia 4 days after her father's body was found. Sometimes, it seems, love is strong enough to transcend death. Robert Sullivan spent 27 years walking the loneliest road in America, trying to reach his daughter. He never made it in life, and according to Maria, he's still trying even in death. But Maria hopes that by delivering that photograph, she helped Robert's spirit find some peace. Maybe knowing that someone remembered him and his daughter was enough to let him finally rest. The lonely roads of America carry more than just freight. Sometimes they carry the hopes and regrets of those who died trying to reach someone they love. This 3rd story is the hardest one for me to share, and I'll warn you now that it involves children. If you're sensitive to content involving pediatric patients, you may want to skip ahead to the final story. This comes from Jennifer, a pediatric nurse who worked at a children's hospital in Denver. Jennifer had been working in pediatric care for 12 years, specializing in critical care for seriously ill children. It's one of the most emotionally demanding jobs in healthcare, and Jennifer was exceptionally good at it. The children's hospital where Jennifer worked had a special ward for terminally ill patients, children who were receiving palliative care rather than curative treatment. This ward was designed to be as comfortable and home-like as possible, with family sleeping areas, play spaces, and a staff trained specifically in end-of-life care for children. Jennifer often worked the night shift in this ward, from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Night shifts in pediatric palliative care are unique. They're quieter, more peaceful, but also heavy with the weight of families spending what might be their final nights with their children. In the spring of last year, Jennifer was caring for a 7-year-old boy named Tommy who was in the final stages of leukemia. Tommy had been in the hospital for several weeks, and Jennifer had become very attached to him. He was brave, funny, and despite his illness, he always tried to cheer up the other children in the ward. Tommy's room was at the end of the hall, room 314. Across the hall in room 313 was Emma, a 5-year-old girl with a rare genetic condition. The 2 children had become friends, and their families had grown close during their parallel journeys. On a Tuesday night in April, Tommy passed away peacefully in his sleep around 2:30 a.m. His family was with him, and Jennifer was there to help them through those final moments. It was heartbreaking, but as peaceful as such a situation could be. Long pause. Then 2 beeps. Okay, stay where you are. Officers are on their way. Is the person who might hurt you in the same room as you right now? 1 for yes, 2 for no. Instead of beeps, Rachel heard something that made her blood run cold. A child's voice, very faint, as if coming from far away. Mommy, why won't you answer me? Rachel felt her heart race. Hello? Is there a child there? If you can hear me, I need you to respond. Mommy, you're scaring me. Why are you just standing there? Rachel could hear footsteps, small ones, like a child walking around. Mommy, there are people at the door. Should I let them in? Rachel immediately radioed the responding officers. Unit 12, approach with extreme caution. We have a child at the residence. Adult caller unable to speak. Possible domestic situation in progress. Through the phone, Rachel could hear knocking and police officers identifying themselves. Then she heard the child's voice again. Mommy, the police want to come in. Why won't you move? Rachel heard the front door open and officers entering the house. Unit 12, we're inside the residence. Came the radio call. We have a situation here. Requesting detective unit and coroner. Rachel's heart sank. In domestic violence situations, calls for the coroner usually meant they were too late. But what the officers found was far more disturbing than a typical domestic violence case. They found a woman standing in the middle of the living room, completely motionless, staring straight ahead. She was alive, breathing, but completely unresponsive to any stimulus. No injuries, no signs of struggle, no indication of what had caused her catatonic state. More importantly, there was no child in the house. The woman was identified as Jennifer Walsh, a single mother who lived alone. According to neighbors, she had a 4-year-old daughter named Emma, but Emma had died in a car accident 6 months earlier. Jennifer had been found in the exact position the officers described many times before. Neighbors reported that for the past month, they had occasionally seen Jennifer standing motionless in her living room for hours at a time, always in the same spot, always staring in the same direction. The direction she was staring was toward Emma's bedroom, which Jennifer had left exactly as it was when Emma died. Rachel stayed on the line during the entire police investigation, and she could hear the child's voice throughout. Why won't mommy play with me anymore? I miss mommy's hugs. Tell mommy I'm not scared of the dark anymore. The officers at the scene couldn't hear the child's voice. Only Rachel, through the phone line, could hear Emma talking. Jennifer was taken to a hospital for psychological evaluation. The doctors determined that she was suffering from severe catatonic depression, likely triggered by the anniversary of her daughter's death approaching. But here's what still haunts Rachel. The phone call had lasted for over an hour, with Emma's voice coming through clearly the entire time. When police examined the phone that made the call, they found it in Emma's bedroom, sitting on her small desk next to her coloring books. The phone was a toy phone, a plastic children's play phone that wasn't connected to any phone line. Rachel provided me with the call logs, police reports, medical records, and photos of the toy phone. She also sent me the audio recording of Emma's voice from the 911 call. The audio analysis confirmed that the voice belonged to a young child, approximately 4 years old, speaking with the vocabulary and speech patterns consistent with that age. But Emma Walsh had been dead for 6 months. Rachel believes that Emma was trying to get help for her mother, who had become lost in grief and was slowly fading away from reality. The 911 call might have saved Jennifer's life. She received the psychological help she needed, and has slowly begun to recover. Sometimes, it seems, love transcends death. And sometimes, a child's concern for their parent is strong enough to reach across the divide between worlds to ask for help. Emma just wanted someone to take care of her mommy when she couldn't anymore. He never heard from the driver calling himself Midnight Express again. James hopes whoever it was made it through the fog safely, without stopping to help people who died 36 years ago. Sometimes, it seems, highways remember their worst moments. And in the right conditions, thick fog, late night, lonely roads, those moments replay like a recording, visible to drivers who happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. James still runs I-40 through New Mexico, but when fog develops near Tucumcari, he keeps his eyes on the white line and doesn't look at anything else. Because some accidents are meant to be witnessed only once, not relived over and over in the eternal fog. This fourth story comes from Marcus, a 911 dispatcher in Louisiana who has worked through multiple hurricane seasons and natural disasters. Marcus is used to handling emergency calls during extreme weather, people trapped by flooding, families separated by storms, and communities dealing with power outages and dangerous conditions. But during Hurricane Isabel in August of last year, Marcus received a series of calls that defied every natural explanation he could think of. The storm had brought unprecedented flooding to the parish where Marcus worked. Entire neighborhoods were underwater, and emergency services were stretched to their absolute limit. Marcus had been working 16-hour shifts, coordinating rescues, and trying to get help to people trapped in their homes. At 4:30 a.m., during the height of the storm, Marcus received a call from a landline in the Riverside District, an area that had been completely evacuated 2 days earlier due to flood predictions. 911, what's your emergency? Please help us, said an elderly woman's voice. We're trapped in our house. The water is up to the second floor, and it's still rising. Marcus immediately began gathering information. Ma'am, what's your name and address? My name is Dorothy Williams. I'm at 847 Riverside Drive with my husband Robert. We couldn't evacuate in time, and now the water is too high. We're in the upstairs bedroom, but I'm afraid the house won't hold. Marcus checked his evacuation maps. The Riverside District had been under mandatory evacuation for 48 hours, and according to his information, it was currently under 8 feet of water. Mrs. Williams, I'm going to get help to you, but it may take some time. The rescue boats are dealing with multiple emergencies. Are you both okay? Any injuries? We're scared, but we're not hurt. Robert has his heart medication, so he should be okay for a while. But the water keeps rising. I can hear our downstairs neighbors calling for help too. What happened next still gives Dr. Kim chills. As soon as Maria entered the trauma bay, she walked directly to David's bedside and began speaking to him as if he was conscious and responding, even though he was on life support and showing no signs of awareness. I know you're scared, Maria said to David, but you need to make a choice. You can stay, but it's going to be really hard. Or you can go, and I'll understand. Maria paused, as if listening to a response that no one else could hear. I see him too, she continued. Your dad is here. He's been waiting for you. Dr. Kim felt confused. According to the information they'd received, David's father had died 5 years earlier in military service overseas. Maria had never mentioned seeing anyone else in the room. But then Dr. Kim noticed something that made her question her own sanity. In the corner of the trauma bay, barely visible in her peripheral vision, there was a shadow that didn't belong to any person or equipment in the room. It was human-shaped, tall, and seemed to be standing at attention in a military posture. When Dr. Kim looked directly at the corner, she saw nothing. But when she focused on David and Maria, the shadow was clearly visible in the edge of her vision. Maria continued her one-sided conversation with David for several more minutes. Finally, she kissed his forehead and whispered, "It's okay. I love you. Go with your dad." At that exact moment, David's heart monitor showed a brief, unusual pattern. Not the erratic rhythm of a failing heart, but 3 distinct, strong beats, almost like a signal. Then his vital signs began to fail rapidly. Dr. Kim and her team worked desperately to save David's life, but it was clear that he was slipping away. As they prepared for the inevitable, Dr. Kim noticed that the shadow in the corner had moved closer to David's bedside. David passed away at 2:47 a.m. As Dr. Kim was completing the necessary procedures and preparing to speak with Maria about next steps, something unprecedented happened. The trauma bay's automatic doors, which required either a key card or a pressure plate to operate, opened on their own. No one was near them, and the pressure plates showed no activation. The doors remained open for exactly 30 seconds, long enough for 2 people to walk through, then closed automatically. Dr. Kim immediately checked with security about the door malfunction. The electronic logs showed no key card access, no pressure plate activation, and no mechanical failure. The doors had simply opened and closed on their own. But Maria saw something that Dr. Kim couldn't. "They're leaving together," Maria told her, looking toward the doors. David and his father. His dad finally got to meet him. Over the following weeks, Dr. Kim couldn't stop thinking about what she'd witnessed. She reviewed David's medical records and discovered details that Maria couldn't have known. David's father, Sergeant Michael Torres, had died in Afghanistan when David was 17. According to military records, Sergeant Torres had been awarded a Bronze Star for staying with wounded soldiers under enemy fire, refusing to leave them behind even when ordered to retreat. He had died while protecting others, just as he seemed to be protecting his son during David's final moments. Dr. Kim also learned that the trauma bay where David had been treated was the same room where Sergeant Torres had been brought 5 years earlier when his body was returned from overseas. The family had been allowed a brief private viewing before the funeral home took custody. But the most unsettling discovery came when Dr. Kim reviewed the security footage from that night. The cameras clearly showed the automatic doors opening and closing with no visible cause. But in the split second before the doors opened, there appeared to be 2 translucent figures near David's bedside. One shorter figure that seemed to be supported by a taller figure in what looked like military fatigues. The image was brief and unclear, but it was definitely there on the recording. Dr. Kim provided me with copies of the security footage, the door access logs, David's medical records, and military records for Sergeant Torres. She also included statements from other staff members who witnessed the unexplained door activation. In the emergency room, doctors fight death every day. They see miracles and tragedies in equal measure. But sometimes, Dr. Kim learned, death isn't the enemy. Sometimes it's a reunion. And sometimes, love transcends even the finality of death, ensuring that no one has to face the unknown alone. This final story comes from Lisa, a 911 dispatcher in a small town in Oregon with a population of about 8,000 people. In small towns, dispatchers often know the callers personally. They handle everything from medical emergencies for their neighbors to helping lost pets find their way home. But last spring, Lisa received a call that involved children she had known her entire life, even though those children had been missing for over 20 years. On a Saturday afternoon in May, Lisa was working the day shift when she received what seemed like a routine call about children playing in a dangerous area. 911, what's your emergency? Hi, this is calling to report some children playing near the old quarry on Mill Road, said a woman's voice. I'm worried about their safety. You know how deep that water is. Lisa knew the quarry well. It had been abandoned since the 1980s and had filled with water over the years. The town had posted warning signs because the water was deceptively deep, but kids still occasionally played in the area despite repeated warnings from parents and police. Can you describe the children you saw? Lisa asked. There are 3 of them, 2 boys and a girl, maybe around 8 to 10 years old. One of the boys has red hair and freckles, the other has dark hair. The little girl has blonde pigtails. They're playing on the rocks near the water. Lisa felt a chill. The description was incredibly specific, and something about it was triggering a memory she couldn't quite place. Are the children still there? Can you see them now? Yes, they're still playing by the water. They don't seem to be listening to the warning signs. I'm worried one of them might fall in. Lisa dispatched an officer to check the quarry while keeping the caller on the line. What's your name, and where are you calling from? My name is Janet Morrison. I'm driving by on Mill Road, and I can see them from here. Tommy laid on the horn and flashed his lights, expecting the dog to run. But it didn't move. It just sat there, watching his truck approach. Tommy had to swerve to avoid hitting it, his trailer swinging wide as he moved into the other lane. As he passed the dog, he looked in his side mirror and saw it, still sitting in the road, head turned to watch his truck drive away. Crazy dog, Tommy muttered. Could have gotten killed. But about 5 miles up the road, Tommy saw it again. The same massive black dog, sitting in the middle of the highway, waiting. Tommy's heart started pounding. There was no way that dog could have gotten ahead of him. He'd been driving at highway speed, and he hadn't seen any other roads or paths the dog could have taken. Once again, Tommy had to swerve to avoid it. Once again, he looked in his mirror and saw the dog sitting motionless, watching him drive away. This happened 3 more times over the next 20 miles. Each time, the black dog would appear ahead of him on the highway, sitting and waiting. Each time, Tommy would swerve to avoid it. Each time, it would watch him pass without moving. Tommy grabbed his CB radio. Breaker 19. Any drivers running northbound on 491? This is Desert Tommy. A voice responded immediately. This is Roadrunner, southbound on 491 about 20 miles north of your position. What's going on, Tommy? You see a big black dog on the highway? There was a long pause. You saw it too? Yeah, I passed it about 10 minutes ago. Damn thing was sitting right in the middle of the road. I thought it was going to cause an accident. Another voice chimed in. This is Silver Eagle. I'm at the truck stop in Shiprock. Roadrunner, Tommy, you guys need to be real careful. That black dog is bad news. They're walking toward the road now, toward my car. The little girl is smiling and waving. But this is strange. They look a little faded, like I'm seeing them through fog. And their clothes look wet, even though they weren't in the water. Officer Bryant's voice came over the radio. Dispatch, I've walked the entire perimeter of the quarry. There are no children here, no footprints, no signs that anyone has been in this area recently. Janet, Lisa called. Are you still there? The little girl just spoke to me, Janet said, her voice now shaky. She said her name is Melissa, and she asked if I could tell her mommy that she's okay and not to be sad anymore. Lisa felt tears in her eyes. What else did she say? The boy with red hair, Tommy, she called him, said to tell everyone that they're not lost anymore. They said they've been playing together all this time, and they're happy. Janet, are they still there? They're walking back toward the quarry now. But, Lisa, they're not walking on the ground. They're walking on the water. All 3 of them. Just walking across the surface like it's solid ground. Officer Bryant radioed again. Dispatch, I'm standing at the water's edge. I don't see anything unusual. The quarry is calm, no disturbances on the surface. Now they're waving goodbye, Janet continued. All three of them are standing in the middle of the quarry, waving. The little girl, Melissa, she's blowing kisses. And now, they're gone. They just faded away. Lisa sat in stunned silence. She had Janet drive to the police station to give a full statement, and she called in additional officers to search the quarry area one more time. But what happened next convinced everyone involved that something extraordinary had occurred. The other driver looked shaken. I've heard stories about a black dog on this highway. Drivers who see it usually avoid accidents. But I saw it and crashed anyway. But you're alive, Tommy pointed out. Your truck's damaged, but you walked away. If that dog hadn't made you swerve when you did, you might have gone over the edge of the road instead of jackknifing. The timing saved your life. Later, Tommy researched the black dog phenomenon on US 491. He found dozens of reports from drivers over the past 50 years, all describing the same massive black dog appearing on the highway at night, always before accidents or dangerous situations. Navajo tradition speaks of protective spirits that take animal forms to warn travelers of danger. Some believe the black dog is one of these spirits, forever patrolling the Devil's Highway, trying to prevent the deaths that have made this road so notorious. Tommy provided me with his logbook, GPS records, dash cam footage showing something large and dark on the highway, though the dog itself appears as more of a shadow on camera, the CB radio conversation recording, and the accident report for the cattle truck incident. He also connected me with 4 other drivers who have encountered the black dog on US 491. Tommy still runs that route, and he's seen the black dog twice more since that night. Each time, he slows down immediately and drives with extreme caution for the next 50 miles. And each time, he's encountered some form of danger, debris on the road, sudden weather changes, or other hazards that would have been disastrous at full speed. Sometimes, it seems, lonely highways have guardians. The black dog of US 491 may be supernatural, maybe a Navajo spirit, maybe something else entirely. But drivers who've seen it agree on one thing. When the black dog appears, you slow down, pay attention, and drive carefully. Because it's trying to save your life. The Devil's Highway earned its nickname through tragedy. But according to those who drive it regularly, there's something out there trying to prevent more tragedies. Something that appears in the form of a massive black dog, sitting in the middle of the road, forcing drivers to wake up and pay attention before it's too late. Tommy's advice to anyone driving US 491 at night: if you see the black dog, don't try to hit it. Don't try to avoid it at the last second. Just slow down, drive carefully, and thank whatever force sent that warning. Because on the Devil's Highway, warnings like that might be the only thing standing between you and disaster.